we're a very small organization that has a very large set of responsibility.
Those were the words of the North Dakota State Auditor, Josh Gallion. On this episode, I had the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Gallion as he detailed the role of the department and its employees. The work of the auditor and its employees, as with many state agencies, is relatively unknown to most citizens. But as we will hear, it plays a vital role that helps educate the citizens about how different aspects of the government function, which allows the people, as Mr. Gallion notes, to hold the government accountable. I'm happy to be visiting with Mr. Josh Gallion, the elected state auditor for North Dakota. Mr. Gallion has served as state auditor since his election on November 8th, 2016, and thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you.
If you could just give us a little bit of background about yourself, just so that people know who the state auditor is.
So I first came to North Dakota back in 1998 as a member of the United States Air Force, served up at Minot Air Force Base. That's where I met my wife, and we decided to make North Dakota our permanent home. Again, married, 2 daughters. I've worked in the private sector. I've worked for the public sector at various state agencies, the DOT, the Public Service Commission. At the PSC, I was the chief financial officer before being elected state auditor.
All right. Great. So we'll talk just a little bit about the office. Are there any special qualifications and experience necessary to be the state auditor?
So in law, there are no requirements listed. My qualifications include bachelor degrees in accounting, business administration, and I have an MBA. And so I would say there's no specific requirements. Those degrees and that education for me has been extremely beneficial, having a good understanding of accounting, because so much of what we do is financial related. You've got to know the debits and credits, and all the different structures that that our auditors face. Coming from the government side, understanding state government, fund accounting, that's also been very helpful. But there is no one skill set. You look across the country at a lot of my colleagues in other states, very diverse backgrounds, from law, CPAs, accounting, where I'm at, to, you'll have communications people. We've actually had, I think at one point we had a pharmacist as a state auditor. So, there is no one size fits all for this role. It's really about critical thinking, but you do need to make sure that you can understand, the financial world.
Sure, absolutely. So what exactly does the role of state auditor entail, your leadership role?
So for me specifically, to me, it's making sure that the organization here, we are maximizing the use of our resources, applying those skills, those expertise to ensure that other levels of government, in the state auditor's office, we are looking at state government, including the university system, local government, even if there's federal lands and oil extraction is happening out there, the royalty payments being paid to the federal government and the state. My role is making sure that we are using all of the resources. We are creating a culture that attracts workforce to make sure that we can ensure that all of those entities are doing the right thing with the resources that they are entrusted with.
So in the state auditor's office, how many people fall under your umbrella? How many employees does the state auditor's office have?
Well, we are authorized 65 full-time employees, including me. We also leverage interns, something that we're really proud of. It's one of the best avenues that we've found for maintaining our talent pipeline, getting new people in to address some of the workforce challenges that we've faced. So it could range anywhere, with vacancies, anywhere from 60 to 70 people.
Okay.
So really, we're a small entity when you think about the size of government, even here in a small state like North Dakota. There's nearly 80 state agencies,
right?
Almost 2,000 local governments, and you look at all of the federal lands out there and the mineral leases going on. We're a very small organization that has a very large set of responsibility.
So your people are working all the time.
There's always something going on, and it's a lot to keep up on, which is another thing that I spend a lot of my time, is I'm constantly reading and evaluating and looking at the work that my team is doing to make sure that we're aware of all of those different reports and different audits.
Good. How does the state auditor's office contribute to ensuring government accountability?
So that's something that a lot of people will come up to me and say, hey, thank you for helping hold government accountable. And I have to correct them and say, I don't actually hold government accountable. We do our work. We apply our talents, our skills, our professional abilities to evaluate, to then write reports. And then the accountability piece is us providing that transparency to those charged with governance, to the citizens. It is them who hold government accountable. It is our job to educate them on how their government is spending their money. So that is how we support accountability, is through our work, transparency, and education.
Okay. Which kind of led into the next question. I was going to say, what role does the state auditor play in promoting that transparency in government operations?
So yeah, it's really when we get our reports completed, our communications team, we really spent a lot of time over the last several years improving our report writing. It's very important to us to make sure that those reports, if we put them down in any cafe in any small town, North Dakota, that it can be understood. So we have put so much effort in making sure that those reports, which used to kind of be written by auditors, almost for auditors, unless you had a really good understanding of auditing, they're very hard to interpret. So we've taken a lot of time to try to make those more easily understood by a broader audience. That's how we have had some tremendous success in improving transparency through that education piece.
Okay. Well, there are a number of different types of audits. Are there specific types of audits that your office conducts?
There are. So for state government, we're looking at typically a performance audit. There are some entities we do conduct financial statement audits, which is another type of audit, but that one is what our typical audit is of local governments. So if we're looking at counties and cities, it's going to be a financial statement audit. The university systems are performance audit. And then what we have out in on federal lands, we do conduct some audits, but a lot of those are compliance reviews. And a review is another type of an audit. It's more simplified procedures. But so financial audits, performance audits, and then there are some reviews.
Okay. Is there an average time an audit takes, or does it depend on the entity that's being audited?
So many variables. I mean, that answer is it all depends.
Mm-hmm.
The size of the organization. When we are looking at an engagement, we're assessing risk. So if there's higher risk, it might add additional audit steps and procedures, which can affect the size and scope of the audit. And so, yeah, size of the organization, level of risk. If there are certain areas that are identified that we need to look into, there could be additional objectives. All of that can play into the size of an audit. But there's no one size fits all. It's not a formula.
Sure. Which again kind of goes to the next. How many people are involved in an audit on I suppose maybe the university system or something like that?
It all varies. So when you're looking at an individual agency, and we can talk about state government. So we do those performance audits. We're looking at the use of resources. Those are going to be maybe some smaller teams. Could be 3 to 5 people looking at a state government agency. But the reason why we do the performance audits on state government is because we conduct a financial audit on all of state government, our annual comprehensive financial report. There's a lot more people involved in that. When you think about our state budget, this biennium is $19.5 billion. It's a lot of money to look through, and that go beyond that to all of the different funds and the reserves. I mean, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars that we conduct this audit every year. That is a much larger team. I mean, that's almost all hands on deck.
Right.
We're all focused on getting that done. Just to make sure that, again, we can provide those assurances and transparency so that those charged with governance, including the citizens, can hold government accountable.
Sure. Well, how does your office ensure impartiality and independence in its audits?
Mm-hmm. So that's something for us that is very important. Even the structure of the office, being independently elected. I don't work for the governor. Mm-hmm. So having that separation That's important to know. I mean, I think when people think of state government and maybe the executive branch, they think, oh, the governor's on top and everybody reports to him. That's not actually how North Dakota is structured. We have more statewide elected officials, I think, than any other state. And that design and that structure alone provides a lot of independence within each entity. So that independence, to me, being accountable back to the citizens, is one way that we maintain independence. Another way that we maintain independence here with our staff is to make sure that they don't have any conflicts with any of the entities that we audit. And we're talking about if their spouse might work at another government agency, they're not allowed to be on that audit. We have to make sure that we maintain that separation to ensure that there is no perception of conflict, and that all of that would impair our independence. So it's something that we are very cognizant of. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, our work is independent, it is objective, it is something that all of the users of those audit reports can rely on.
Sure. Is there a specific way that the state auditor's office identifies areas for audit within state government? Or is that dictated by the law?
So the law specifies, sometimes the time frame. There are certain areas that we have to look at. And then again, as I mentioned, the risk assessment process, whether it's a review of internal controls or we're looking at some data analytics, it might lead us into different areas to evaluate because something might stand out as, a little bit of an anomaly. We're going to want to make sure that we do look at that and evaluate, and if there are any concerns, we want to make sure that we get it in the report. One, so that the client can make any corrective actions that they might need to. We want to make sure that we're informing the legislature and the citizens, again, to ensure that all government is being good stewards of public resources.
Sure. What mechanisms are in place to address those findings and recommendations from the audit?
So I get asked a lot, why can't you just make sure those agencies just get it done? And, for me, the mechanism is we put it in an audit report, and at the state government level, we report that to the Legislative Audit and Fiscal Review Committee. At the local levels, we'll present those audit reports to those boards and commissions. And it is their responsibility at that point to ensure that those recommendations are implemented. That is kind of where we are required to draw the line. As we talked about independence, the reason why we can't make sure that things are corrected, if we start stepping in and making sure that these our clients, these organizations actually improve it and we're giving them directions, those directions are a management decision. If we become part of a management decision, we can no longer be the auditor because our independence is impaired. So for the auditor's office, we write a report and we hand it off to those. And it really falls into under their authority to make sure that it's followed, it's improved, those recommendations are implemented.
So if an audit would find fraud or misuse of public funds, basically it's just kind of addressed and then handed to them and say, you do need to fix this.
Correct. I'd clarify that our engagements that we do, they're not designed to go after fraud. That's not the purpose of what we do. But yes, if we do uncover any fraud, waste, or abuse, we do follow auditing standards to make sure that that is properly reported and communicated to all of those individuals charged with governance.
And you've mentioned engaging with the public and offices and stakeholders. How do you do that to communicate those complex audit findings?
So we've spent a lot of energy over the last 4 or 5 years as well, making sure that those audit reports and those complex topics, we try to boil those down into more digestible. We use graphics, infographics. We'll try to write them in plain language, all to get that information communicated to people who may not have that technical knowledge. So that they can more easily understand. So we've used all kinds of communication techniques. Our communication team here in the auditor's office has done amazing things to make that more easily digestible for our audience, whoever that might be.
And is there a way that the state auditor's office engages, whether it's the results of an audit or otherwise, with local governments and agencies outside of the audit process, or is it just primarily with that?
So most recently, we created the Office of Good Government, and within that, we're actually this year, we're doing our third ever annual audit summit, where we can provide information, training, updates, and that's a free virtual seminar available to anybody who would like to attend, to just learn firsthand from several people on our team, very qualified, very competent individuals, learn more about the laws, the budgeting process, some single audit, which is the single audit, which I don't think we talked about. That's an audit on federal funds. So any federal expenses that occur in a government entity, once they cross $750,000 right now in a year, they're required to have a single audit. So we've got updates on that. But we are constantly putting not just our audit reports out there and the findings, but we're also trying to make sure that we're addressing things on the front end to help improve training, improve understanding, so that on the back end we hopefully don't have quite as many findings. I mean, I think people think, oh, the auditor's office, we love having findings. As we mentioned, our staff is limited. We need to make sure that we manage those, we train people, and in North Dakota we've had tremendous workforce turnover across the whole state. There are so many people that have retired and new people coming in, and so much experience and knowledge has, we've kind of lost it. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that we've got those avenues for people to do things right, we spend a lot of time on it, and really proud of our efforts. We want to make sure the audit report is kind of the test at the end, or the audit is the test at the end. We're trying to get people more of the answers up front and encourage them to ask questions, reach out to us. We help everybody, not just our own clients. The private firms out there, if they have clients, and that's another aspect we didn't really talk about. The North Dakota State Auditor's Office, we only do about 15% of the local government audits. The other 85 is actually handled by the private sector. They're contracted with them, but they're still our clients in our mind. Those private firms are operating under the authority of the State Auditor's Office, and so we work with all of them, and we're trying to help the entire industry here in North Dakota as we, again, continue to face workforce challenges, learning gaps, and we're trying to fill all of those as often as we can.
Yeah. We do have a Native American population within the state, and does your office have any auditing function of the reservations or tribes in any way, shaping? They do have a unique relationship with states.
They do. I mean, they are within the state of North Dakota. However, they are a sovereign entity. And so the extent of the auditing that we do typically around tribal lands is in schools. So if there are schools that receive funds and resources from the state of North Dakota, we do conduct those audits, but the tribes themselves, no, we do not conduct any of those audits.
Okay. How has technology influenced the work of the auditor's office, even just since your tenure began here?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. That's something even this week we've been talking about technology, and I think the biggest factor is AI. The implementation of artificial intelligence at almost every level. I mean, it is already everywhere. And so some of the things that we're trying to be very mindful of in this new technology and this new tool, every tool, can be a double-edged weapon, right? Mm-hmm. It can be good and bad. And so for us, being that audits are confidential, we want to make sure that we can maintain our clients' information confidentiality. We do deal with some sensitive stuff. How we roll AI out to improve or support the auditing function is something that we want to make sure that we're doing cautiously, responsibly. Because if data gets into AI, nobody can really give me a definitive answer. Where does that information go? Because it seems like once AI consumes it, it's got it. Mm-hmm. And we need to make sure that we are very aware of any information and access to the information that we're looking at, especially if it's sensitive. We audit the Department of Health and Human Services. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of medical information over there that is extremely sensitive. And so we want to make sure that while this new technology, this new tool, it can be revolutionary, it might change everything we do. We just want to make sure that we roll it out responsibly.
Great. Last couple questions. First one, if there is someone who's in school what kind of education do they need to come and work in your office?
Well, in recent years, we've really branched out to look at different skill sets and different disciplines. The number one background that we still have to this day is our students with accounting degrees. I mean, those are still extremely valuable. I'm very appreciative of the accounting degree that I have. They seem to be in the business world and the financial world, kind of like the wild card degree. But we've looked at finance degrees. We've looked at mathematics degrees. We've even branched out. We have a medical auditor on staff, and she's a registered nurse. And so when we're looking at the disciplines for the different areas that we're evaluating, it's not so much just a single degree. It's more of a skill set. It's, what kind of talents and abilities and expertise can you bring to help us understand the auditing function, or at least the work that we're evaluating, to give us a better understanding of our clients. We can teach auditing. There's no degree in auditing. And so it's more the critical thinking skills, the problem solving skills. That's where I would love to see our education system really focus on developing those. If you're trying to conduct an audit, it's really you're trying to put together a puzzle, and you may not have a complete picture. And so you've really got to think critically and evaluate, how do you get there? And what we tell people when we bring them in, when they don't have, that accounting degree, that solid understanding of maybe the debits and credits, it's okay. We'll teach you. Sure. And so we're constantly reevaluating different skill sets, different abilities. And that's really the culture that we've developed here is we talk about diversity, and for us, a lot of that is diversity of skills, diversity of thought. We all bring different perspectives into this, and all of those are valuable. They can all enhance the auditing function. We're looking at business degrees, finance degrees, mathematics, economics, medical, and who knows, there may be more down the road. We've talked about engineering. Mm-hmm. So there's always options. Our focus is on hiring good people. And what I have found is when you have great people find a way. Great people figure it out. And so that's been my goal ever since day one, is I wanted an organization full of the best people that we can find. And those great people are going to deliver fantastic results.
All right. My last question, because we're looking at state agencies and so forth, everyone gets the same last question. What would be the result if the state auditor's office disappeared from state government? Why is it necessary?
Well, if it disappeared, we wouldn't have some of the necessary audits that state government requires. That Act for Audit directly ties to our bond rating. And so if the auditor's office wasn't doing it, it would typically cost taxpayers more. If we weren't auditing state agencies to provide some of that transparency so that those could hold government accountable, there's nobody looking. And when, in our experience, if nobody's looking, it leads to potentially bad things happening. And so, to me, a strong auditing function is really a deterrent. Ronald Reagan talked about peace through strength, and making sure that having a strong military service prevented bad actors from doing bad things. To me, a strong auditor's office is going to prevent maybe somebody out there who wants to commit fraud, waste, and abuse, or opportunity presents itself. They might think twice. So if the auditor's office isn't here, some of those things could happen. And at the end of the day, we always have to remind ourselves we are spending other people's money, and we need to do so to the best of our ability within the confines and the constraints and in the best interest of the public.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to help listeners understand the role of the North Dakota Auditor's Office and what it plays in state government, and the work that you and your staff do for the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for spending some time with the 701 Civics podcast. Be sure to give a thumbs up for today's podcast and subscribe to catch the latest episode of the 701 Civics podcast as we continue together to learn about North Dakota state government.